Welcome back, everybody, to the Grit, Give, Recognize, Implement Time podcast. I'm your host, Steve Nathanson, and I'm here with a very good friend of mine, a very kindred spirit, and my own personal coach, Carrie McCoy. So, Carrie, welcome. Thank you so much for doing this with me. Such a pleasure to have you on here, and I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our listeners, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Steve, for having me on here. I've been really proud of what you've set up, and like you said, we're kindred spirits, and just how we look at things, our mindsets. And so I'm excited to be a part of your podcast and part of what you're doing. But like you said, I'm Coach Carrie McCoy. I am the founder and owner of Just Try. I've been running my own coaching company for the last 15 years. And I'm also the founder of Kona Kids, a nonprofit organization that works with kids living on the Big Island. In addition, I've raced professionally as a triathlete for a couple of years, and I'm working on establishing that again.
Yeah, it's a really just amazing background and story that Carrie has. And speaking of Kona Kids, there's a story I wanted to share with that, because today we want to talk about mindset, right? Mindset that we see in folks and how we help them overcome it. And I want to share a personal story I don't think the listeners have heard yet, but one of my big goals for 2020 was to put on a in-person race. And of course, everything that's happened with 2020, that completely went by the wayside. But I was thinking about something I say quite often, which is, if we never ask, we'll never know. If we never try, we never will. Be the movement in your life. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm very big on being able to lead my clients in the way that I live and lead by example. Yeah. And to that point, Carrie and I were talking one day, and I'm thinking to myself, well, there may be a great way here to actually really help kind of benefit what she does with Kona Kids. She loves racing. Why not throw it out there? Let's just see, right? Because if I don't know, the answer is definitely no. So on the phone one day, I said, hey, Carrie, would you have any interest in doing a virtual race to raise money for Kona Kids? And thankfully, the answer was yes. And
heck yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
We had a great time working together. We had a great time putting on this race. We raised money for her organization. And I share that because I could have very easily, I think, let that go by the wayside and not met that goal of mine. Yeah. And I could have easily let all the negativity with today going, it's never going to happen. It's not even worth pursuing it. But flipping that mindset, really embodying, I think, a lot of things that I teach, I went for it. I asked, because if I didn't, I would never know.
Yeah. Oh, and it was such a blessing for us too, for me, I listed the 3 things that I do. I run 3 jobs. And so to have someone else with your energy, with your passion come along and say, hey, do you want to do this? It was an idea that I had actually had, I just hadn't shared. And I didn't have the bandwidth or the time to pull it together, to have someone else come alongside to ask that question. I think half the time it just takes the courage to just ask. I mean, the worst thing I could have said was, no, we're not going to do it. Right. And it was incredible. It was a blessing on all ends. It helped raise awareness and funds for our foundation. And I truly believe it's, the first year of that race, we've got many years to come now. We're going to look back in 20 years and go, wow, remember that time we started in 2020? Yeah. When everything was closed, so we launched a race.
Yeah. I think it's going to be great. It's going to be really great to see where that goes. Yeah. And at the heart of it, I think it gets to some of the things that you and I both do with the people that we work with, which is really dig into the mentality and what often comes first right before the actual action. And that's what maybe I'm curious about. What do you find are some of the most common things that you work with on the mental side with your athletes or even your kids?
I was thinking about this, and I think one of the most common things is perspective. And we had talked about that in our end of season stuff with our team, but really keeping things in perspective. And 2020 has been perfect, test of that. And when it comes to keeping it in perspective, what I tell my kids, when I tell my athletes is, what are you grateful for? Because one thing I've never found is I've never seen or met an unhappy, grateful person. Because if we're taking into account what we're grateful for, even if it's as simple as, or as monumental as the roof above our heads, I am constantly reminded in the foundation and the kids that I work with, because I work with kids that are living in low income and transitional housing, just how grateful I am that my refrigerator is full. How grateful I am that my parents were able to give me all the things they were able to give me as a child that I totally took for granted. And, and reminding my athletes of that, reminding my kids of that. And it's amazing when I work with some kids that I feel have material wise so little, and yet they're the ones that are so grateful. Oh, coach, I'm so grateful for my family. I'm so grateful for my friends. I'm grateful that for the people that have donated so that we can go out to eat together, and you can buy our school supplies. As an athlete, it comes to being grateful for the gifts that we have to do this. We get to spend an Ironman's $850, right? So we get to spend that kind of money to be able to race, but we can. It's not a matter of, do I stock my fridge or do I race? It's just, this is what I get to do. It's a gift to swim, to bike, to run. And keeping that in perspective really helps us move forward in any direction, towards our goals that we're reaching.
Well, what I really like about that too is that when we talk about what I'm grateful for, it automatically puts us in a mindset that allows us to give thanks. It allows us to be positive and to be happy, right? Which has such a good physiological effect on our bodies and keep us in the right mindset of what we're focused on. We're gonna have a little visitor here for those who are watching this video. Dude just couldn't help but come up and say hello. He's a big fan of Coach as well. And he's also very good at looking at the positives. And to that point, right, is we can very much focus on the problems, the issues at hand, what's plaguing us. And that literally will bring us down because it activates the sympathetic nervous system, which can have detrimental or negative effects on us, versus when we think about what we're grateful for, it can activate that parasympathetic nervous system that does make us happy. Very similar to exercise, right? It releases endorphins, makes us happier. So I love that you brought that out. And I want to ask actually about perspective. We've talked about fearless belief, you and I, and we put that on the back of our Kona Kids 5K race shirt. So I'm curious, how does that maybe tie into perspective, or does it stand alone and for something different for you?
I think, it all ties in together. I don't remember what movie it was. It's some movie that came out about 10 years ago. And on the back of, it was a boxing movie. And on the back of this guy's jersey said, "Simply believe." And honestly, that started the whole concept of, with my athletes, 10 years ago on Just Try, it was simply believe towards your goals. The person who needs to believe the most is you. It is amazing to be surrounded by people who are supportive, but if you don't believe in yourself, then it's never going to happen. And so changing, it's a part of that perspective. Not only am I grateful for what I get to do and what I have, it's, I have to believe in the goals that I've set. And then the next season, because each season I like to have a theme. So the next season I changed it to fearless belief, because we want to fearlessly believe in what we've set our minds to. And, a lot of times fear is what holds us back. And so getting athletes to look beyond that, to say, no matter what the obstacles are, no matter if we don't feel like we have the tools, if we keep fighting for what we believe in, we will gain the tools. Instead of trying to plan the whole thing, just looking and knowing, if I just fearlessly believe, no matter what, this is going to happen. You've heard me say it to you. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. If we're willing to put in the work, it's not if I attain the goal, it's the when. And that's important, because the when doesn't always look like when we want it to look like. But knowing that I'm fearlessly fighting for what I believe in, nothing can stand in my way. No mountain is too tall. No mountain is too steep. And that's where that fearless belief comes in. It's incredibly important for our kids. They are surrounded by so many obstacles, especially right now with COVID and everything that's happening for them that's completely out of their control. So helping them learn what it is like to set a goal. And even though to them college seems monumental, helping them know that what the grades they get in 5th grade or 6th grade or 7th grade and 8th grade sets the tone for high school, sets the tone for going to post-secondary school, to be the first one in their family to go to college, to be one of few that finish high school, and helping them fearlessly believe that there's just so much more. And even though their goals seem so high, so hard, to keep fighting for it. And I tell my kids that, I tell my athletes that, obviously tell you that, Steve.
Yep.
But I also live that. I know that my goals that I've set are really hard. And on the day to day, sometimes it seems like it's Mount Everest and I'm climbing it with a walking stick. But in all reality, I'm going to keep fighting for what I believe in. And then I know I'll attain it. There's no doubt.
Yeah, there's a couple things I think I hear in there as keys. Is number one is having a goal or something to fight for, something to believe in and to push me, but also to recognize that it's not built in one day. There are small achievable steps I can take right along that journey towards this overall arching goal that are much smaller, much more manageable and achievable, building my confidence in it, creating these small wins, right, that create that momentum to help us get to where we want to go. And also, I think giving ourselves permission that it is a journey and it does take time. And guess what? That's okay.
Yeah.
Because I am capable. I am not constrained by this ceiling, right? I'm capable of busting through that glass ceiling, right? If you want to talk about it in a different light. But those are some of the key things I think I hear in that for the people that you work with.
I would agree. And like we talked about, we set this whole concept of perspective. So perspective is acknowledging those wins. If I focus this on you, you've got some big goals that we've set. And this, a month and a half ago, we earned a PR in a marathon, and I told you, I really want you to take this in. You did it. Was that the goal of the next 5 years? No, but it was a stepping stone to get where we want to go. And so not just being grateful for what we have, but acknowledging where we go, because it is a journey. Hard goals, you have to be relentless for, and hard goals, you have to fight fearlessly for, and they don't come tomorrow. And that's what separates so many people from attaining hard things, is that not everyone is willing to fight for them. So keeping it in perspective when you're fighting for something, the little wins. Oh my gosh, I got better. I got faster. I attained this A, I passed this class, really, I got this promotion. I'm on my way. And that puts it in perspective, and that fuels the fire to keep fighting.
Yeah. And it's interesting you bring that up, because I want to maybe talk about the opposite of that. And we talked earlier today, and we were touching upon this earlier. And I was thinking after we got off that phone call that, now this year, maybe more than years in past, I definitely think I'm starting to feel my age. And what I mean by that, right, is
you're still young. Steve.
I know, right? But to put in perspective, like, let's just round the nearest decades, right? I am a heck of a lot closer to 40 than I am when I was 20, right? And when we're 20 or we're that young, we can go out, we recover fast. It's a different game with your bodies. And the important thing maybe here too is, along this journey and this perspective, it's great to celebrate the accomplishments, the wins, but a lot of times I find what really gets people is not maybe giving ourselves permission for the other things that are naturally part of that journey, where maybe I missed the mark or I didn't push hard enough. And a great illustration I think of that is literally yesterday in my training is I've come to recognize, I think for me, when there's certain things my body does, it's a good indication that the thing I need the most now is that rest and that recovery, which are vitally important, especially as we continue to get older, and giving ourselves the permission to do that. I would have loved to have done my workout yesterday, but I know going into that, the way that my body felt, I probably would have self-destructed about 20 something minutes into my bike ride. And I would have been down on myself. I would have been upset. My dogs would have been like, Dad, what's going on? Why are you so, just, why is your nose bent out of joint? Knowing that, and knowing the journey that I've gone through, I gave myself that permission that, you know what, it is okay that my body's telling me I need to rest and take a nap and sleep. And sure enough, I slept for 2.5 hours straight. And then another good indication, but being okay with that. And that's what I
Yeah.
want to highlight is I think that's part of this journey and this perspective as well, that it's
Mhm.
okay for this journey to naturally say, go 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And it's
Yeah.
part of these ups, these downs, or these peaks and these valleys. It's all part of how we get to where we want to go.
Oh, I think that you're absolutely right. But I think that there's something to acknowledge there that, you mentioned taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But in a training perspective, so for all of those not training, I apologize for this part. But for a training perspective, what you did yesterday by listening to your body, by listening to how it's responding, because as we've talked about, the older you get, you can still get fast. You just have to train smarter. You
Right.
have to be a smarter athlete than you were when you were 20. And I was talking with another athlete the other day about potentially them looking at being professional and racing professionally, and them asking what was the difference. And I said, for me, what I learned, the biggest difference is the pros know how to rest. They not only
Mm,
eat really well, but they know how to rest. And when I was at pro camp and interviewing some of them, one of the takeaways I took was they were like, yeah, I sleep for 10 hours a day. I'm like, I thought that's what makes you weak. Like weak people sleep for 10 hours a day.
right.
Now I sleep for 9 to 10 hours a day. Like I get it. And when I did that, I got faster. So it wasn't taking a step back by resting. Actually, the resting was what helped me take a step forward. And that's what I want athletes to take away from this part of what you were talking about. Because for me and lots of athletes, or lots of people with goals, we're our best when we can fight fearlessly for them, when it's game on, when you have to show up, when you have to fight the battle, when you have to train really hard. There's something about that that some people like myself feed off of. We love it. But then when it comes to resting, it comes to foam rolling, taking care of your body maintenance, making sure you're eating really well, making sure you're not going out super late, and resting doesn't mean running all the errands that day. Resting doesn't mean home improvement projects. Resting literally means resting. That doesn't seem exciting. That's not even Instagram worthy, and so we don't even like to post it. We don't want to talk about it. We
Right.
in our culture feel like it's lazy, but it's actually a part of that fearlessly fighting. You
Yep.
have to train smart. You have to be smart, and you have to do what isn't always culturally seems great and non-Instagram, Facebook worthy, since we're all into posting everything. It's really willing to do the hard stuff. And sometimes the hard stuff could be listening, could be resting, whatever
Mm-hmm.
that looks like in our job and our relationships towards our goals.
Yeah. And here's just how similarly minded I think the two of us really are. Because when you talk about
You
that
say you're
character,
old though, I'm not.
hey, just said I can feel I'm getting older. Twisting my word. Oh man. No, but to the point that you're bringing out, and to this topic of perspective, the beautiful thing you've just done is you've highlighted a key shift in perspective, because we do typically characterize things, oh, I've taken 2 steps forward, maybe 1 step back. But depending on that mindset, like you've just beautifully illustrated, is it's not necessarily always 1 step back. And it's
Mm-mm.
dependent on how we look at it. Because I don't
Yeah,
look at yesterday as a step back.
no,
These
it
things that
wasn't.
maybe we're typically told, right, that are, or things that we didn't hit. Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't hit that PR. I didn't race the way that
yeah.
I wanted to. We can view that as something that's holding us back, or like you've just brought out, is we can view that as a learning opportunity, something that is
Mm-hmm.
truly going to
Mm-hmm.
get us to where we go. And reality is something that actually is continuing us forward and making
Mm-hmm.
that progress. It's all a matter
Absolutely.
of perspective and how we look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. When you guys have races that don't go as well, our marathon went fantastic.
Yeah.
A month and a half ago, I told you it was a perfect race. Write that down because you learn from it. But you learn more from the races that don't go perfectly.
Yeah. Right.
And very rarely are there ever any perfect races, especially in Ironman and in racing. And the takeaways from there and your ability to come back from something. Because even in a race, when you've set yourself up to have the most perfect day, something is going to go wrong. And your ability to keep it in perspective, to keep fighting fearlessly and being relentless towards that finish line, may end up in the best race you've ever done. And our ability to kind of keep things in perspective on days that don't go as well. Not every training session is ever going to look great. Not every day at the job is ever going to look great. Not every moment in relationship is ever going to look great.
Right.
But keeping things in perspective, what is our goal and what is my takeaway? What can I learn from this to create that tool that I needed to climb a little bit further, a little bit higher?
Yeah. I want to dig into that a little bit because, and maybe this is just me, the way that my brain works, and we're going to get a little insight here, but I think about this a lot of times just because it's a very political year, right? We had an election in 2020. I'm going to kind of relate it to that. Let's say I was running for office and I'm talking about maybe my platform, or people accuse me of this or that. I've always wondered, how would I respond to the question about, say, striving for perfection, or, have you made errors and mistakes? And the way that I would answer that truthfully is to be truthful. Yeah, I'm not perfect. I have made mistakes, nor do I actually strive for perfection. I strive to be the best that I can. I strive for excellence, but I don't strive for perfection because, to your point, when things don't go the way that we want them to, when experiences are not maybe the best ones that we've had, things maybe we regret or we would like to have done differently, they are often the things that teach us the most, and they make us who we are. And it is, again, kind of that matter of perspective of how we look at these experiences we have in life. There's certain things that I would have done differently, or maybe I regret and would like to redo, but I value what I've learned from them because they do make me who I am. They make me better, stronger, faster. And that's why I wanted to kind of dig into that, because I think that's a wonderful point, that it's okay to be who we are. I always say this, giving ourselves permission to be human. We have both sides, and that's okay.
I think that, I guess in my mind, my perspective on that is that, none of us are perfect. And when you strive for perfection, you're never going to achieve it. And I really like reaching towards goals that are achievable. And that's a part of that SMART: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-based, right?
Yep.
SMART goals. So perfection is never something that I'm going to achieve. But I know what some of my strengths are. I know what some of my weaknesses are. And my weaknesses will never be perfect, and they'll never be my strength. But being aware of those and wanting to make those stronger, and not just looking in the mirror and saying, well, that's just how I am. I'm not the best swimmer, so I'm not really going to work on it. That means I'm not going to achieve the goals I have in triathlon. I'm in personality, I'm an outgoing person, but I struggle with being organized. Well, I'm just not going to work on that. Well, you can't not work on that when you run 3 companies. So even though organization is not my strong point, it's something that I'm aware of and being willing to constantly work on, from relationships to as an athlete to as a business to as a coach. My personality is encouraged one way, but I work with athletes. I have 50 athletes a season, and they're all motivated by different things. And it's my job to be able to get to know every single athlete and learn, how do I motivate that person specifically? Not just out of my lens, not how I'm motivated, not how Steve is motivated, but how is Kelly motivated? How's John motivated? How can I get the most out of them to get the potential that I see? And so I never want to be someone that says, well, this is just how I am, so accept me. I want to be someone that says, this is who I am, but I constantly want to be working towards improvement. So like you said, I can be the best athlete I can be. I can be the best version of me as a coach, as a business owner, as in a relationship, as a daughter, as a sister, that I can be.
What are some, there's been a lot that we've talked about, and a lot of great points. And maybe kind of a good question to ask about is, within all of these, what are some steps do you think people can take to really help honing in on kind of their perspective, setting their goals, right? Being their best selves, kind of dealer's choice maybe on where you want to take this next.
So I will say that something that I have you guys do at camp, which you'll experience at camp this year, Memorial Day weekend, is that I have the athletes for every day for 4 days that you guys are there. is write down 5 things that you're grateful for. I have never met in the 15 years of coaching someone who shouldn't do this. And the ones who are looking already and going, or listening to this and going, ugh, that's just a waste of my time. You're normally the ones who need it the most. And I love you, but it's true. So it's being willing to write it down, being willing to put it in front of you, puts it in perspective. What I think is important when it comes to setting goals is, one, keep it in perspective. Write things down that you're grateful for a week. Write 5 things down. It changes people's mindsets, especially going through hard times. Yeah. But then also, a part of that is you're taking ownership. You're acknowledging what you're grateful for. And then a part of setting a goal is taking ownership of the role that you play. Look in the mirror. You're the person who gets to control that. So then set a goal. I do think that it's incredibly important to set goals. I work with all my athletes and my Kona kids on setting goals. It's also something that I'm wired to do. It's what I do. But if you don't have a goal, you don't go anywhere. So even if you're listening to this and you're going, well, I don't really want to be an athlete, but I'm a business owner. Well, then what's your goal within your business? Mm-hmm. Or look at your relationships. What's your goal within your friendships, within your marriage, within, your dating relationship? What are the goals there? And write those goals down, and then come up with points of how you can reach them.
Yeah.
I want to spend more time with this person. I'm going to call this person once a week. I'm going to commit to that. I really want to know more what's going on in their lives and be a better friend and be more involved. So here's my stepping point. As an athlete, I'm going to commit to 4 foam rolling sessions a week of 10. This is how I'm going to get there. So not only set a goal, but set steps of how to get there. And then what I think is also important is that this is, like we talked about being grateful, but this is something you get to do. So if you're an athlete, you get to do that workout. That's what I remind myself. Steve, you asked me how my swim went. I was like, well, I had one. I have another swim later. I also have a run workout I get to do. It's very easy sometimes to be like, oh my gosh, coach. And yet at the same time, I always think this is something I get to do. I get to go running later. I get to do 2 swims in a day.
Right.
I hope my coach is watching this. But it's keeping things in that perspective, being grateful. This is what you get to do. You get to be in a relationship. You get to have these friendships. I'm grateful for them. I get to do these workouts, and then set those goals, and then come up with stepping stones so that you can achieve them, and that you get to see your improvement and keep yourself accountable, and then put it where you can see it. Yeah. Sometimes I tell you guys to put them by the mirrors, put them in your car. What are you going after? And what's important? What do you need to keep in mind? And then the last but not least, every day is a new day. Every week's a new week. Every month's a new month. It's a new opportunity. So even if you're focusing on nutrition and diet and those things, and you're like, I did not own that. My favorite football team lost and I just felt horrible. So right. The point is, tomorrow is a new day, and really looking at every day as a new opportunity to embrace and to make that change, to work towards those goals.
Yeah. And there's a lot of great content that you just put out there. And a lot of it ties back into things that we've talked about and kind of connecting as themes. And at the heart of it, goals are definitively one of the typical 5 buckets that motivation can fall into for us as human beings. Yeah. Goals is definitely there for a lot of us. And there's a lot of great things you brought out too of how do we actually do that? We've talked about SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound, right? Some similarities in different words there.
Yeah.
Same concept, right? It's got to be specific. Oh, yeah. You've got to make it measurable so I can see how I'm doing and really get feedback on that progress. It's got to be attainable, meaning, right, if I say right now, I don't know, can bench 100 pounds, I can't just set that goal as I'm going to bench 500 pounds. It's got to be something I can actually attainable, right? It helps us reach that. Relevant. Is this actually relevant to me as a person and what I want to achieve as a whole? And then yes, time bound helps me put some constraints on it again, so it's not just open-ended and I can achieve it. And you've even brought out, well, how do I do that? I do it step by step. And I'll say this, when something is still attainable or relevant and realistic for us, we may need to start out a little bit slower. So if I say don't foam roll at all, let's just say, right? And then maybe we want to do it 4 or 5 times a week. Maybe I need to interject that a little bit more slowly, perhaps, to really build that habit and the mentality to do it. So it's okay with our goals to start, okay, once this week is achievable, then twice, then 3 times, then 4 times, right? Small, achievable steps that help us get to where we want to go. And I love the fact that you talked about writing it down. And why I say that is our brains are incredible, and there's a lot of information that's there, and we may think inherently, oh, I know what my goals are. But unless I speak them or write them down, they may still remain, let's say, a little bit foggy. But when I actually do speak or write, my brain is forced to make sense of all that information, create clarity around it, and then understand those goals more distinctly. And they may turn out a little bit more differently than we thought they would, right, by getting it out.
Yeah.
And then I want to also mention, you talked about the visibility factor. I'm a huge proponent of seeing things, whether it's motivation, whether it's inspiration, whether it's our goals. Constantly seeing it keeps it at the forefront of our minds, reminds us of it, and then does inherently drive us to it. So just, thank you for allowing me to maybe kind of recap what you said, but there's so much great content in there. You're like, yeah, you're welcome, Steve, it's fine. But those are, I think, are really some of the things that we've hit on multiple times today that the folks who are listening or watching this can actually implement in their own lives to start gaining clarity and awareness around their goals, and then how to chunk it up in a way that is truly achievable and helps them, climb up that mountain.
Yeah. I think talking about them, we talked about writing them down, but there's accountability. If you're putting them where you're putting them at your desk computer, people are going to see those. And there's accountability, and then giving you the chance to talk about it, but have confidence in that goal. Know that you're going to not always achieve it every day, or every day won't be a step towards that goal, but having confidence. I'm going to, I had a goal to get my pro card, and I achieved it, and I raced professionally for 3 years. And then, I want to recertify that card. And that's a goal I have. And I'm not afraid to talk about it. I'm not afraid for other people to know it. There's accountability with that.
Yeah.
And there's always that fear of, well, what if you say a goal and people watch you fail and not reach it? My thoughts are that, we don't live in fear, and I'm not afraid to fail. And for those that are afraid to fail, they never see their potential, because you're not willing to stretch those limits. By me saying I want to reattain my pro card again, I'm putting in the work. I'm surrounded by athletes that are all watching that happen. You all can track me on race day. There's the accountability across the board. But when it comes down to it, this is my journey, and I'm going to own it. And if I change that goal, it's my journey and it's my goal to change.
Yeah.
But having other people be a part of that, it also is an opportunity. It's a footprint that we can leave. Because if we're parents, your kids are watching, and they see mom and dad put those goals up, and they see mom and dad change. And I remember as a kid, my parents told me lots of things, but the things that left the greatest footprint on my life is watching them do it. And it was their actions that spoke so much greater than words.
Yeah.
And so I see that with my kids in my Kona kids. I've got 150 plus kids in the program, and they're all on Instagram. So they all watch what I do and post and all those things. And it's staying accountable to them because they're watching. Yeah. And so are my athletes are watching. And it's an opportunity when we set goals and we fearlessly and relentlessly fight for them to leave a footprint, to leave an impact on those around us, because believe it or not, those guys are actually on the journey as well.
Yeah. And it makes it real for a lot of us, right? When we make those goals known to people, to your point about the accountability.
Very real.
Yeah. Right. And it's one of the things that I truly value about offloading my workouts and my training programs to you, because it gives me that extra accountability, right? It helps me reach those goals. And I certainly do things per our plan that I didn't do before, right? And it's a big reason why I wanted Carrie to be my coach, amongst a lot of other reasons of why choosing her specifically, but it's because I know she will drive me to get better by doing the things that I do need to do that I would maybe naturally kind of put to the side because I don't enjoy doing them. And that's okay. I will willingly do it per our plan, right? To get stronger at the things I need to get stronger at to achieve our goals. So it makes it very real, and accountability is huge. And one thing maybe I'll say to some of the points we're making about kind of the belief and the perspective is, I think one of the greatest gifts we can give as a human being is when someone doesn't believe in themselves, is to believe in them for them. Because I think that inherently helps us believe in ourselves by having people around us that constantly lift us up and build us up and help us see what we are worth and what we can achieve.
I agree with that 100%, 110. And I think what's interesting is that unfortunately you find more people who will tell you how hard your goal is, and not always know how to support someone. But like you said, the power of telling someone, you know, I believe in you and you got this. And it changes everything. I heard a great podcast one time talking about youth, and, you know, for kids that feel as though they have no one who believes in them, their quote unquote success rate was a lot lower to rise above, to get out of where they're at. But if a child feels that one person believes in them, and that doesn't have to be mom and dad, it could be the coach, it could be the teacher, it could be the neighbor, then it changed 90%, you know, their ability to rise above, to reach these goals. And it's like that as an adult too. So I would rather be the person that helps someone achieve than let someone know how hard it is. You know, the person setting the goal, they don't need to be told how hard a goal is. They've set it. You know, they've set it and it's a challenge for them. So you don't need to tell them how tough that's going to be to lose that weight, or how tough it's going to be to do an Ironman or reach that position at work or make this relationship work. They know that. But being the person that says, all right, so what are your steps? How are you achieving that? How can I encourage you? How can I keep you accountable? How can I cheer you on? That is not only going to leave an impact on them and help them achieve their goal, which is something why I love to go to your guys' races, because I get to see my athletes and all their hard work pay off. You cross a finish line and the goals that we hit have been worked towards for the last years or, you know, year itself. And it's incredible, but you get to be a part of that. It also leaves a footprint on you, because believing in someone else helps you also believe in yourself.
Yeah. And we have that choice. And that's one thing maybe we haven't talked about explicitly here today. Stumbling over my words. This coach making me nervous. Got to be on my A game for her. But that's one thing we haven't brought out yet, is we do have that choice, and we always can make that choice, right? We can either let what doesn't help us kind of consume us and take us to where we don't want to go, or we can embrace what is going to help us, what is going to help others, and make that choice. We have that with exactly what you're talking about. And maybe real briefly, just kind of revisiting, let's say, single leg work, right? It's definitely something I did not do. I had that choice to do it or to not do it. Yeah. And I chose not to do it. And it's not helpful for me. But what I did choose was, you know what? I need help in this arena. I need help making myself actually accountable to doing what I need to do to better some of the things that I want to better to get me to levels that I want to get to athletically. So I recognized not only, I think, what I needed to do that, but what was the right choice for me to make that happen. It wasn't me putting my plans together, me saying, oh, I'm going to do this. It was getting help and being okay with asking for that help as well. And that choice is something that we always have, that we can ask others for this help to reach those goals. And it's okay to do that.
Well, I think there's power in community. There's huge power in community. And community doesn't always have to be just family. Sometimes it's family by choice, and sometimes it is family.
Right.
But there's humbleness in asking for that kind of support. But it's also, you were calculated in who you asked. You know, you didn't just ask your neighbor to support you. You knew who I was. You and I have had many conversations about coaching, about your training, about your races, just as friends. And so you had done your research. And so who you chose to be your coach, who you chose to give your goals to, and who you chose to open up and be vulnerable with, of who to believe in you, was very calculated. And I think there's something to be said for that. You know, I can go to the neighbor down the street and tell them what my goals are, and they probably don't know that an Ironman is 3 sports that you do all in one day without stopping. It's a very common thing.
Right.
So, you know, I've learned over the years to be really calculated to who I am vulnerable with, and who gets to believe, and who I'm going to listen to, who gets to believe in me. And now I'm surrounded by those that can speak into my life that way.
Yeah.
But not, you know, we, in our culture, especially Instagram, Facebook, all the things, we like to get all the likes. You know, I want all the likes. Here's my goal. I want all the likes. And yet there's, when you set hard goals, or just goals in general, that you're not going to get all the likes. Not everyone's going to think it's attainable, because most of the time they're not shooting for goals themselves. They're not believing in themselves and trying to reach potential in their own lives. So they're really not going to see it in yours. And so being it helps, for me at least, it helped build a backbone of just, it doesn't matter what other people think. The person that has to believe the most, we talked about this in the beginning, is myself. Keep it in perspective. I have to believe in my goals. Steve, you have to believe in your goals. And then like looking and being calculated as to who I share that vulnerability with, who I share that journey with. That's really what it is. Who do I share that journey with, that we can go towards those goals together? And that's important. So I think community is amazing. I think you've got to be smart with it.
Yeah. And that, my friends, I think is a whole another episode actually to get into at one point. Is right. Honestly, who do we have in our life? How do we select the right people to be in our life and surround ourselves with the people who are truly going to help us be successful? There really is a lot to dive into that and actually understand, how do we go about that? How do we overcome the toxic, non-serving relationships in our lives as well?
Yeah.
So let me maybe bring it back to today and actually ask, with everything that we've kind of brought out, and even if something completely different that we haven't touched upon, what's maybe 1 or 2 things you would want to leave folks with from today?
Oh, make me summarize. I would say, in all seriousness, I would say I would love people to take away that concept of perspective and looking around, and what are you grateful for? I think that's the first base to everything. In order to build a house, you have to have a solid foundation. So set the foundation of, what are you grateful for? What are you thankful for? And then, like we talked about, from there, build your house. Concept of build your goals. What are your goals? What are you reaching for? And though Steve and I talk so much about training, and it's such a focal part of our lives, there are goals in every area that we are a part of. And that's what I want the takeaway. So no, you don't have to be a professional athlete, or even an athlete who just loves the sport. You are who you are. So what are your goals in the areas of life that you have? And then create those baby steps, share a part of that journey, and if you want, you can message Steve or I about, hey, I listened to this and I set these goals, and here are my steps. And, that I would love to hear about that. That's I'd love to hear the impact of a podcast like this. That's the takeaway I want. And then I know those goals are going to be hard. And I know there's going to be moments where you're like, I don't know if I can do this. But that's where that fearless belief comes in. Believe in yourself. And Steve, I'm sure we'll do a podcast on community and surrounding yourself by people. Surround yourself with those people. Share that. Don't be afraid to say, I'm just struggling today. Help that person remind you. Steve shared with me, today when we're talking earlier about his training and his thoughts on yesterday. And, he has a coach in his life to say, no, Steve, that was the right decision. So if there was any doubt in his mind of, maybe I should have tried to run my body into the ground yesterday, his coach is saying, no, Steve, you did the right thing. That was the smart thing. So surround yourself with those people, and never stop fighting for what you set your mind to, and always believe in yourself and in your goals that you've set.
Yeah. Very, very well said. And I actually want to give you an opportunity, because folks do know how to get in touch with me. I want to give them the opportunity to learn how they can get in touch with you should they want.
So there's obviously, I talked about, there's kind of two different sides of between coach and athlete and Kona Kids. So I guess that's three different sides. But if you're interested in a foundation, it's called Kona Kids, and our website is konakids.org. You can learn more about what we do with the kids. You can learn ways of being involved or donating. If you even want to do our 5K next year, Steve and I would love that.
Yep.
If you're interested on the coaching side of it, my company is Just Try. So it's JUSTTRI.net. If you have any coaching questions along those lines and want to hear more about that. And my Instagram is Coach McCoy 24. So if you want to follow my pursuit towards my goals of recertifying my pro card and taking that to the next level, feel free to do that as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Carrie. You know, I always love our conversations. I really appreciate you taking the time out of today to speak with me and speak with our listeners. Such great wisdom. We'll definitely have to have you on again, because we can talk about the community piece quite a bit. So I urge everyone who's listening, if you have questions for Carrie, please reach out. She's an amazing person. Definitely grateful to have her in my life outside of the coaching aspect as well. So thank you very much for doing this with me today.
Thank you for having me, Steve. Again, thank you for setting this up for, this opportunity. I remember meeting you 5 or 6 years ago. You were in a different place in life. You talked about setting this, and I know we're going to run out of time, but for those that don't know Steve's journey, he has really fearlessly believed in the goals that he set, had to do complete career changes, humbled himself to get where he is now. And because I know that you left footprints in the job you had before, and I see the footprints and the impact that you're having now. And it is truly, a blessing, and it's inspiration as a friend and as your coach to see you and see how hard you fought for where you are. And now you've set up this platform to kind of bring people together, to encourage others to achieve. And like you said, strive for more. And what a great platform you've created. But I remember where you were before, and you talking about this. And that's what's so amazing. To hear someone talk about something and to hear them and then watch them achieve it is incredibly inspirational. So it's easy to see where you are now, and for people not to know where you were before, going, you know what, I think I want to do this. I think I might do a triathlon. I think I'd like to start my own company. I think I want to change everything. And I want to be a life coach, and I want to inspire others, and I want to help coach others to achieve their best. And that's where you are now. And I'm very proud of you. So.
Well, thank you. Before I start getting into tears, I think we're going to call it a day. But this has been great. I really appreciate it again. And until the next time, everyone, please, if you never ask, you'll never know. If you never try, we never will. Be the movement in your life.